Welcome to Obsidian for Tabletop RPGs. Let's learn how to use the tool. G'day guys, and welcome back today to another Obsidian video. Today we're going to be having another look at how to work with maps within Obsidian. Specifically, this video is going to be about regional maps. What I'm talking about obviously is your overland maps or your world maps. Maps that obviously cover a lot of distance, and it's all going to be about distance in this video. Alright, my previous video was sort of on encounter maps, which is dungeons and probably towns and cities maybe, but this map here is going to go a little bit deeper. And when I say distance, what am I talking about? Well, it's the ability to measure. Alright, so if we hold down Alt and we click and then click, or click and then drag, you can basically see that we're getting the ability to measure distance, and that can be really handy when you're using one of these tools, because what it allows you to do is come in here and measure the distance between locations. So let's say my players want to go from Subar to Boreskia Bridge, don't know how to say that. We can come in here and use the measurement to say it's approximately 39 miles. Now, for those of you who have seen some of my other videos, you know that there is the ability using data view to actually have your notes automatically calculate how many days or how many hours travel it takes between towns. And this is how I'm doing it, is I'm using the Obsidian.leaflet functionality for measurement to give me the measurement in miles, which I'm then converting with a bit of calculation to say this is how many days and hours it's going to take you to travel. So that's what we're going to go through setting up today. Now, of course, what you need to do is go through and install the plugins. So come here to Community Plugins, make sure Restricted Mode is turned off. Come in here and do a search for Obsidian.leaflet. Alright, you can see it's another one by Jeremy Valentine. This is the best map plugin that we've found, and it's designed for the TTRPG community, so it's certainly a fantastic option. It's been downloaded 49,000 times, it's getting very popular. So go ahead, do the install. Once it's installed, do the enable, and I do recommend that you go through and have a look at the README file before you dive too deeply into this, just so you can learn how it works. Alright, so once that's installed and once that's available, we basically need to go through the process of how to use this plugin. So first, let's just go through and have a quick look at what we can do. We did this in the last video as well, but you know, the ability to zoom in on your maps, ability to zoom out, you can go full screen. Alright, we can show everything. Alright, we can recenter our view. We can filter things on and off. We can have different types of things appear as you zoom in. So as you can see, when I'm zoomed out, you only see the cities and the regions. As you zoom in, you get to now see the towns and the areas of interest. I find that quite useful. We can lock the map. There is the ability, if you watch my encounter map, to do layered maps. I haven't probably found much of a use for that in a regional setting yet, although maybe if you wanted to do an Underdark and an above ground and an underground sort of regional map, that might make sense if you want to have it all together. And we can draw shapes on our maps as well. Okay, if you want to see that in more detail, have a look at my last working with encounter maps video. It goes into that in detail. But as I said, what we're really looking for in this video is how do we measure using this ability to alt-click. Now, if you are using a Mac, I think it is, I believe that the shortcut's a bit different, so it might be control for you. So depending on your operating system, you might need to have a look at what is actually configured for you. Alright, so that's what we want to do, is we want to go through and create a regional map and configure it specifically so that we can get the measurement working. Now, I will say this, one of the very important things for you to understand in your map is what is the measurement. Okay, not all maps have a scale. Now, what I'm talking about is obviously down here we have a scale from 0 to 500, and that is telling us, you know, this is the unit of measurement that you need to use inside of your map. So that is a very handy piece of information. If your map doesn't have that, right, I'd recommend you probably add one, right? You need to probably decide what that measure is going to be, and you know what the distance is going to look like for your map. Alright, the tool's not going to work that out for you. Alright, but here we have obviously the unit of measure, so that's what we want. So the first thing we need to do is get our map into Obsidian. So what I've done here is I've got one that I prepared earlier, and I just pasted it. Right, I went and found that image and I just pressed Control V into Obsidian and it pasted my map into the tool. So if we come down here, you can see that I've pasted in a map that I created a few years ago. You can see I've got the scale in miles, so I've got 0 to 25. All right, and we can see basically like it's just a regional map. We're going to go through and set that up. All right, so how do we do that? All right, well, what I've done just to start off with so you understand is I've pasted the map. I do have an assets folder set up, so any images I paste go straight into that folder. If you don't know how to do that, you just right click a folder that you've created and go set as attachment folder. And that way all images sort of get sorted straight into that folder for you and they're out of the way. Once it's pasted in here, I like to go through and rename them. So I'll go map, or map, regional map of, geez, you know what, it's been so long that I can't even remember what we called it, Lamp OTO. This was a map that was made for the Pro Fantasy Community Atlas, if you haven't heard of that project, where people just make maps and join them together to sort of give you a whole heap of stuff that you can work with. It's a really cool project. I recommend you check it out. What I'll do is I'll rename this again and I'll just get that world LAMPOTE. Alright. So now that I've got it renamed, and I do that just to help me sort my assets folder later if I ever want to do that. I probably don't know if I ever will, but it makes it easier for me to find things. Completely unnecessary step. But now we can basically see the map is rendering, but it's a rendering as an image, right? It's not a picture, so it's not doing anything yet. So I really want to take it the next step with the Obsidian Leaflet plugin. So what do? I press Alt-T, I type map, alright, Alt-T has triggered my templates, insert template functionality. Map brings me up all of the map templates that I have, and you can see here that I've got an insert regional map leaflet template. So I'll go through and put that in. Now, just so you understand the process of doing that, alright, we go to settings, we go to core plugins, and we find templates. That is enabled. We can go into the settings, we can see that there's a templates folder that is defined. So I've created a folder called z_templates, and I've typed the name of that folder in here. That way when the plugin runs, it knows all my templates are in this folder. And then what I've got down here is I've got in templates, I've got a folder called markdown, and in there I've got a note called insert regional map leaflet. And if I open up that note, you can see that I've got my leaflet template here. Now, this is what we're going to be using to configure our map. Now, I've done this so that I never have to remember how to do this myself. Okay, we can see the ## with some text after it. This is a comment. Alright, so this is not part of the actual code requirement. You could delete these and they wouldn't mean anything. I leave them in there. And what I've done is when I was learning how to use the leaflet tool, I've just gone through and documented what each part does so that I only had to remember how to do this stuff once. Now I've got myself my own instructions on here on how to do this, and it makes it a lot easier. At the bottom of this, you can see I've got a iframe. Now an iframe is used just to link a live website straight into your notes. And you can see here that I've got a Google Docs sheet that I've got linked here, and I use that to calculate some of the configuration requirements that go into this map. Okay, so this is temporary, so you can see use this to calculate the bounds and then delete. So this isn't part of the map, it's not required, it's just a shortcut for me to use to make sure that I never have to type that stuff again. Alright, so if we come back here, you can see that I've pressed Alt-T, typed map, selected my regional map template, which I will make available in the Patreon site, obviously when we have a link to this video. And you can see here that I've got this, it's copied this in here as well, and I now have everything that I need to start setting up this map. Alright, so what do? We've got the map name, and what I usually do is I copy the name, okay, with the PNG, and I come down here to the image column, I find the old text, and I replace that. Okay, so I'm now linking this configuration of leaflet to that map. I need to change the ID. Alright, so I'm going to go map_lamp OTEUO. Now, as we covered in the last video, this must be unique. when you save your pins to a map file, it's saving it against this name, okay? And they get saved into the .obsidian folder. We will bring that up just so you guys can see it. All right, so here's my Vault parent folder. Okay, you can see my Vault in here. We are using, I'm in the wrong spot again. We're in this one here, so this is the Vault. In the .obsidian folder, we can find the plugins folder, and we can find Obsidian Leaflet plugin in here. In there is a data.json file. When you are saving pins, right-clicking on the map and going Add Pin, what it's doing is it's creating references under this ID into the data.json file, and that's where all of your where all of your pins are stored. So very important file. Do not ever delete it. All right, but now that you know how that works, we're setting a unique reference for this map. Okay, that's fine. We've got some options here for lock equals true. So we're basically saying I want this to be locked. You can see that it's locked there. All right, and what that basically means is that I can't drag things around the map, drag pins. All right, so here, for example, I can drag that pin around. If I lock it, I can't do that. All right, so this map down here is by default set to start as locked. I really have too much going on here for this, you can see it's sort of messing up. But that's all right. All right, so lock equals true, recenter equals true. They're just some basic default stuff. No scroll zoom equals true. So if true, disables the mouse scrolling for zooming in and out. Button controls still work. Now I've got that set to true. You might want to change that to false. Of course, that is up to you to change for your own preference. Probably the most important setting here is obviously the image name, which we've just updated. And then we sort of get into some areas that are going to be important. Now, we've got height and width. All right, let's just go through that just to show you what that is. We're going to go 100 height and width. All right, you can see down here. I might just get rid of this top bit. Just give me a sec. Let's get rid of this. All right, so here we can see I've changed the entire sizings of that. It's not obviously much use to me, so I'm going to go back to, let's say, 700, and we're going to go to a width of 95, or about maybe 90%. All right, so that obviously takes up the space. Now you can change that, chop it, however you like, get it to the size that you want, whatever you're happy with. Now, I said in the last video, I don't go 100%, and the reasoning for that is, you know, when you're scrolling past your map, if you don't have that setting that I had configured before, where it actually zooms in and out with the mouse scroll button, when you scroll down your map, it actually stops here and it makes you zoom in and zoom out. That's why I've got it set to true. But another alternative is to make sure you don't set your sides of your pages to 100%. And what that does is when you're scrolling through, you just always know to put your mouse on the side and you scroll up and down that way. So that way you continue to move past the map. You don't have to worry about any sort of zoom happening. And you can see here that this is actually captured, this iframe has captured the zoom. It does something similar with this. Now probably so I can show you that, if I turn this to false, see that? Alright, so as I'm scrolling down, I've got my mouse in my middle, I'm mouse scrolling down. As soon as it goes into the map, the zoom takes over. So that's why I've got this set to true. I quite like that as a setting. Alright, but outside of that, we've got our height, we've got our width. So now we know where on the map, how much of the page, I guess you want to say, our map is going to take up. That's what that is about. But it's this bit here that is super important, is the bounds. Okay, now setting the bounds is not difficult, okay, but it can take a little bit of messing around to understand the first time you do it, and that's why I've created this calculator. Alright, so let's open up the calculator and have a look. So, open up your map in an image tool, GIMP, and find the pixel width. That's what we need to do. So, what we're going to do is we're going to find this image. Alright, I'm going to right click, I'm going to show in System Explorer. That's going to bring my map up. Alright, so you can see it's inside my assets folder. I'm going to right click on that, I'm going to open with, and I'm going to use GIMP. GIMP is a free sort of Paint Shop Pro alternative, so it's a really good option for people who don't want to spend any money on this. Alright, and what we're going to do is open up our map. Now there's a couple of things that are really sort of important for us to grab here, and what we want to do from memory, it's been a while since I've done this, but if we go image and go canvas size, we get the number of pixels that this image is wide and high. So we're talking width is 2048 and height is 1642. Alright, I'm just going to jot them down on a piece of paper because I need those. I'm going to come back to Obsidian. I'm going to go into my rendered mode so I can actually see my bounds calculator. Okay, and we can see here we've got the width and the height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in my 2048, I'm going to type in my 1642, and we've got some measurement units here as well. Alright, so what are they? Let's go through and grab that. So we go back to GIMP. I'm using control mouse scroll here in GIMP to zoom in and zoom out. And what I'm going to use is the measure tool. Alright, so with the measure tool clicked, what we do is we click and we drag, and you can see down the bottom there, it's showing how many pixels are basically selected. So if we do that again, just watch down here, you can see click, drag, and you can see how many pixels are obviously between these 2 points. That's what we're trying to do. So here, if we come in and go click, drag, get to the end, we can see it's 268 pixels. So I'm going to write that down. Alright, 268 pixels, and I'm going to go back to Obsidian and I'm going to put in here, we want measure is 268 pixels, and what is my units? Well, the units is 25, so therefore this is 268 pixels across 25 pixels. Now you can see that something has changed here, so our bounds have adjusted. Okay, so we need to change that to 191.04, 153.17. Alright, so we now have all of our configuration done, and we're going to go in now and update the plugin. Alright, so if we go back into our edit mode, we're going to come up here, and you can see here that we've got basically the two options. Now, the confusing thing about this is width is usually at the end from memory, so we're going to go 191.04, and then the height is 153.17. Alright, so that's the bounds that are configured. Just ignore the ones on the left hand side, they're not required. If we render that, what happens? Our map is there. It's obviously very, very small, but that's fine. So we're going to have a look here and see what our zoom levels are like. Alright, we've got max zoom is 18, min zoom is 1.0, so I'm just going to set that to 0. I'm going to set the max to 18. I'm just going to go back to the default. Alright, so just to be very clear, the min zoom and max zoom is how far and close you are away from the map, or how possible it is to get how far and how close. The default settings for that, min zoom is 0, max zoom is 18. Alright, you can't go any higher than that, so don't even bother trying. Default zoom, I'm going to come in here and set it to 0 just to start us off. Okay, so that now resets us. Now, just so you guys are aware, when you hold your mouse over this icon here on the left, it shows you your current zoom. Okay, so we set the current zoom to 0, so we can see here that that's fine. Now, if we want to come up here, we will need to select the default, and kind of this is where I would put it. And you got to ask yourself, like, how far back do you actually need to go? Like, that's at 1.5. If we go to 2, right, so 2 for me takes up most of the screen. I wouldn't want to be further away from the map than that. So usually what I will try and do is I will set my maximum zoom to that. Now if I go in, alright, it goes to 2.5. So I'm not even talking max zoom here, I'm talking min zoom. So I'm going to go max zoom first. I reckon that's enough there. So my max zoom could be 3.5. So I'm going to go back into my configuration. Always do your max zoom first. So I do max zoom 3.5. And if we zoom right in, it can't go any further. Okay, so we're at max zoom 3.5. That's close enough for me. I don't need to go any closer than that to the map. And then if I zoom out, sort of this is where I kind of think it needs to be for the maximum. Like that for me is not useful. I don't need to go that far away from the map. So if I stop there and I go max zoom is 2. Alright, and what I'm going to do is min zoom is 2. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to set the min zoom to 2. Alright, what does that do? We've now got, the level is 2. We can zoom in, we can't zoom in too far. I like that level of control. Right? I don't want to spend hours clicking in and clicking out on my maps. So what I do is when I set it up, I'm quite restrictive around how that can be set up because it's just more useful to me that way. Alright, so now we've set that. What's the default? The default is 2. So we can come in and update the default. Notice that it did default to the minimum anyway, so you don't actually need to do it. But there we go, we now have the min-max set up. Alright, so we've set our bounds, we've set our min-max, we do have longitude and latitude, and what this is basically saying is where do you want to start on this map. So you'll see here that I've got for the center spot, I've got 95.92 and 76.59. Alright, so what we can do is we can come back into here. We'll do 95.92 and 76.59. Alright, and all that does is should basically set the center point for where the map starts. Now the reason why that's important, because if you have a really large map, you might actually decide to change that longitude and latitude so that it's basically adjusting with where you actually start on the map. Okay, so you might want to focus the map in the western corner, for example, because that's where your party is. So you can adjust those numbers to meet your own personal requirements. Now here we do have zoom delta as well. Alright, so zoom delta is how close and further back. Like each time you click the button, do you go in a whole one, alright, or are you going in half a one? I like to go in half of a zoom step. Alright, because that way it gives me a few more button clicks. It doesn't go in so high. We've got miles here as a unit. This is just a string. You can set this however you like. You could make it kilometers, you can make it miles, whatever you call it. Obviously you should be matching your map. Alright, mine is in miles, so I've left it in miles. But if you did change this to snails, then when you do your measurement, alright, it does measure in snails. Alright, so we'll take that back and we'll put that back to miles. And then we've got a scale of 1, and I'm going to leave that as 1. There's no need for me to change that. Alright, so now I have my map configured. Alright, and what have I done? If we zoom in here, if I've done this correctly, I should be able to alt-click here and click over here and get it pretty damn close to 25 miles. Now, there's going to be some OCD people who'll be like, oh, it's not exactly 25. And you're right, you could probably spend hours, getting this exactly perfect. I don't waste my time with that, right? Like, it just needs to be as close as it needs to be. It's based on pixels, guys, right? Like, if you select an additional pixel, it's going to change the calculation ever so slightly. As long as you're clicking in your scale from 0 to 25 and you're getting remotely close, then, I personally, I take that as a good result. But you can tailor that however you like. Alright, so now I'll include a link to the calculator so that obviously you guys can play with it. But let's just, for the sake of the video, let's just go through and have a look and see what it is that's happening here for me to obviously calculate the bounds. Alright, so the calculator itself is actually rather simple. And if we break it down, we can see that there's 2 entry boxes here, one for width and one for height. So we've got a cell here with the width that gets entered, which is 2048, and it's in pixels. Here we've got the height, 1642, and again, it's in pixels. Okay, so we have a box for just importing that data effectively. Then down here we have the measure, which is again in pixels, and this is going to need to come from our tool. And then we have another sort of entry option here, which is units. Now, if we quickly jump back to our map and have a look at that, obviously like this is the scale for our map. And the entire idea of this is we're trying to calculate how many pixels exist for 1 unit of measurement. Okay, so we can see here we've got 25 units of measurement that are required in here to obviously calculate scale. And we need to break that down to 1 unit of measurement. Alright, so what we do, just to run through this again, is we start with image canvas size. That's going to give us the width and the height in pixels. Just note that in GIMP you can change the unit of measurement here, so if it's not in pixels and doesn't say px, you can actually change that back. And then we use our management tool again, obviously, to measure from one point to the other to determine how many pixels exist between 0 to 25 in this case. And if we jump back here, what we're saying is there's 268 pixels between 0 and 25 on the map. We need to divide that by 25 in order to determine how many pixels are actually there for 1 unit of measurement. Okay, so in this case here, there's currently 10.72 pixels for 1 unit of measurement, and that's what it's all about. And then if we come up here, we're calculating the bounds. Alright, so we're having a look at the bounds, and you can see here the calculation for the bounds is the width divided by the measure divided by the units. So 2048 divided by 268 divided by 28 equals the bounds. Alright, for the width, and we do the same thing for the height. It's the exact same formula. Alright, and that gives us the bounds of the map. I'm also calculating the center spot here. That is quite literally the bounds for the width divided by 2 and the bounds for the height divided by 2. So relatively simple calculations. You can make your own calculator. Obviously I'll have a link for this one myself as well. So there you go, that's what's happening in the calculation. And once you've done this, the idea of my template is you just come in here and you delete it because it's no longer required. I would delete the original map because you don't need that anymore. I just do it there so that I can paste it, get the name, do the renaming, alright, paste the text and paste that into here. And now we have a fully functional regional map. We have measurement that is working. We can come in here and we can right click, alright, we can add pins. And we can link those pins to things as well. Okay, there's another part of adding pins to maps that's really quite applicable when you're working with a regional map. And that's because, when you zoom out, you might want to see certain elements on your map, and when you zoom in, you might want to see different elements on your map. And what I like to do is when I zoom out, I have sort of like my regional pins, my capital city pins, and then as I zoom in a little bit further, as I'm sort of playing in that area, I like to zoom in and see towns and encounter areas and areas of interest, that sort of thing. Alright, so how do we go ahead and set that up? Well, what we do is we come down here to settings, we come into community plugins, and we find Obsidian.leaflet, or Obsidian leaflet, which is probably right in front of me. There we go. Alright, we can come into the options, and if you scroll down here, you'll see at the bottom here we have a section on additional map markers. Now you'll see that I've already added some in here. And it's quite easy to do. You can press the plus button, give your marker a name, pick an icon, and then basically set up some details for the min zoom and max zoom. Now, I've had a bit of trouble with this today, so I just want to make sure that you guys don't repeat the steps that I've had. I've found that when you create a new icon and we set the minimum zoom level the first time, or like you set it once, I guess, don't try to come back here and edit it, because it doesn't seem to like the changing configuration very much. Okay, now there might be a bug, and I've raised this to Javelin for his investigation, but for now just be aware that the process should really go, we create an icon, so let's go ahead and create one. We're going to create one called car. We're going to come here and pick the car. Alright, then we're going to come in here and I'm just going to change the layer icon so I can see the car. Fast cars should obviously be red, so we're going to pick a red car. Alright, I'm going to leave these two empty for now just so you can see how this works, because this is the standard sort of process for creating a new icon that you can use on your map. So let's press save. That's now in my list of icons that can be used, and if I close that out, What I need to do is get out of this map and get back into the map sometimes, and I find that is a necessary step occasionally in order to make this work. We can right click, select car, and car is now visible. Now just for your understanding, if I hadn't have gone out of the map and gone back into the map, I could have right clicked, added car, and it wouldn't show the car. Okay, that seems to be the bug. As long as you get out of the map and you come back in after you've created that new map icon type, it seems to work just fine. Alright, so now I can drag the car around. I can put it over here, or I can maybe put it at the screaming tree, for example. Alright, so that way I know something's going to occur at the screaming tree, and I can right click and edit that marker and link that to a note, alright, or I can put a description in here that basically when I hover it will display the description for that thing that I'm linking to. That's basically the point of pins, is you're allowing it to link to other notes and display other information. Alright, but what if I don't want to see this car all the time? Because you'll notice if I zoom right out and zoom right in, that you can still see the car. What if I want to set a minimum zoom level? Now, what we're going to do for here is we're going to find out the default. So I'm at the default zoom level now. I don't want it to be displayed currently, okay? Because this is an encounter. I don't need to see it right now. I'm at my max zoom. I want to see my capital city, and that's basically it. I'll even get rid of whatever that was that I was playing with there. I want to see just the car, but I want to see the car when I'm zoomed in. So I want to see the car when I'm zoomed into level 3. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to document down that on a piece of scrap paper that I want it to be visible at level 3. I'm going to come down here to settings. I'm going to come in here to Obsidian leaflet, come down to my car and click settings. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the minimum zoom level for this to 3. Click save. Alright, now I'm going to get out of this map again and get back into the map again. And now you'll see the car is gone. Alright, if I zoom in, still no car because I'm at level 2.5. If I zoom in one more time, the car is now visible. Okay, so that seems to work. But I just want to repeat again, what I found doesn't work is if you come in here and you set both of these. For me, min zoom seems to be the level. Pick where you want it to be visible and off you go. I found setting this one and then changing these even can be quite problematic, and it caused me a bit of issues. So, well, there might be an issue there. I might just be misunderstanding it, but banged my head at it for a while and it was causing me a bit of grief. I found that where grief does happen, the easiest way to fix that is to delete the icon completely, alright, and then recreate that icon, and that seems to be able to fix the issue up. Alright, so let's click save on that, close that out, and we now have zoomable map icons that obviously can be used however you like, right? You might want oceans to be visible at certain levels, and that's about it. But anyway guys, that is how we use Obsidian Leaflet to make regional maps. Obviously the big difference there is we learned how to create the bounds, alright, for our maps, and bounds are the bit that really enable the measurement to work, alright? So that's really sort of the benefit there. And we also learned how to make pins that are visible at different zoom levels. They're the two things that stand out for me that are useful for you at sort of the regional map level. And don't forget, we haven't really gone through it, but you can just like right click these things and link to a note, and that's how you can obviously get that working. Alright, so hopefully that's been useful for you. We'll leave it there. If you do enjoy these videos, please do like and subscribe. We have also recently opened up the Patreon Discord that I was running to the public, so I'll include some links for that in the description below. Please feel free to come and join us, as we have a large number of people in there now that we're able to sort of chat and support each other through our issues with Obsidian and through our learning curve as we go through this journey together. It's a fantastic resource, so feel free to come and join us. I will include those links. Outside of that, I want to say a huge thank you to my patrons. Obviously my Patreon is adjusting a little bit here. The Discord is no longer private, but there is still a private chat channel in there for patrons. But I just want to say thanks to everyone, obviously. I didn't want to keep it locked from people so that they couldn't have access to the help when they needed it, right? Like, it was too good a resource to keep people behind a paywall. Alright, but outside of that, thanks for your support, everybody. Enjoy your day, and I will speak to you on the socials.